just super. The guy in the front was this young guy, and he was super nervous, and he was like, lesson one, road signs, and then he would drop a card and pick it up. It was and I would look around at these soldiers. All these soldiers were just going like this, watching him.
Hey everybody, Scotty here, and I just wanted to make a quick little blurb for this video before we get started. The first thing I want to say is thank you to everyone who commented and left questions and made this last video such a success. This has definitely shown us that there's appetite for this, and so we're going to start a little series where we do acquisition for dummies, and maybe at some point in the future I won't be the dummy anymore. All right, so our first question is from a user named Rockcom7267, and I just want to thank you so much for asking the question, and I hope that this video gives a really good, complete answer for you. And I just want to encourage anybody else, ask the questions. We want to answer as many questions as we can. We also answered a question from, it is Goody124 the Skater 7. That video will be coming out in the next few weeks. Really good answer to that, really in-depth answer to that question. So we hope you tune in for more of these, and we hope you keep asking great questions. Thanks. Rockcom7.
Rockcom7.
He said, what's the deal with personable vendors? Is it making an effort to go to conventions and or make an attempt to befriend you?
Gotcha. So Rockcom7, if I misunderstand your question, I apologize. But I'm interpreting your question as, why do you go through the effort? You have a lot of these companies who do make a big deal about being friendly with the government, and going to the trade shows, building up relationships. I'll tell you, actually, I have a funny story on that. So, nice. As a government professional, especially a contracting officer, you get that a lot from companies. You'll get people will know, like they knew who my kids were even. They'll be like, how's Sally doing? Or, they're like, good. It's for 2 years, my wife and I, we had 2 kids at the time. We went to Germany and we worked on installations, and I worked with German contractors. Okay. And German contractors do not act like American contractors. And what
do they act like?
I think culturally, Germans are very frank.
Okay.
They're very, to the point.
Yeah.
And they give and take constructive criticism extremely well. Americans can learn from the German culture. Okay. So when I would, they would not do all that with me. They'd be like, and then when I would send out a solicitation, we would get to the point of negotiations. In their proposal, they'd have a page listing all of the typos and errors that would need to be corrected. And they'd be like, first, can we discuss what's wrong with your solicitation? I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Precision, huh?
They just, they were not into the, the business development kind of dance that you play to try to get in. But then going back to America, sometimes it was that way. Sometimes it was aggressive with some companies where they would say, hey, Sally's about 5 years now, right? And they try to show that maybe they get more business if they knew all about that contracting officer. Or I gotta say, sometimes it worked. It's like these guys, or guys or gals that would call. We'd have really good conversations, and I'd be like, I like that.
I like it.
I like that company.
Yeah.
They like the same kind of music I do. But of course,
is that part of your solicitation? Pearl Jam versus Nirvana.
You gotta prefer Nirvana over Pearl Jam, or it's over. So there is obviously a rule in the government that you cannot have that kind of bias, right? Mm-hmm. Of any kind of conversation, even if you get there's a screaming match you have with a company during a market research, and you can't just bear a grudge on that company. You got to leave all your personal preferences out. When you're making a decision as a decision authority, right? Source selection decision authority, the contracting officer at the end of the day makes that award decision. So the source selection board goes through all the evaluations. You can't let any of that stuff creep in. Like, I remember this company. We had that really great conversation.
Yeah.
They know my kids. Oh, it's Bill. He knows how old my daughter is.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yeah.
But there's only so far you can do that stuff, and sometimes it gets super hokey, and maybe that's what Rockcom was.
Rockcom.
Rockcom. Sorry, I was about to say Romcom. Rockcom would not.
Rockcom.
I can tell Rockcom is the kind of person that would not like that.
I like that name. I wish I had thought of that
Romcom?
username. Rockcom.
Rockcom.
And 7. 7's my favorite number. So
7's a perfect number.
yeah.
Skater
77
had
is even
7
better.
at the end of his
7.
name. The 7's a good
Yeah.
YouTube name. So maybe Rockcom's getting to the point where when it does get a little hokey, it does get a little obvious. And there are, clear distinctions that I saw. Nothing against, of course, like more beltway companies who come to the trade shows with the American flag on the lapel, and they're there to serve, That's great, actually. In a lot of ways, I don't want to make fun of that. But there's a clear distinction between that type of attitude and some of the non-traditional companies we tried to work with AI. Hoodies, sometimes you couldn't even tell whose side they were on, like America or China. No, I'm just kidding. You cut that part out. But like hoodies, not no etiquette really, but something incredible to offer.
Yeah.
They got, in a lot of cases, they got just as much award money as the folks who were, into the relationship building.
Yeah.
So it comes to a certain point where it really is about what you offer. And if you have something good to offer, you can be in a hoodie. If you're submitting really good drones that have good battery life, that can go out on the edge in combat environments, then you don't have to wear the American flag pin on your. Okay, having said that though, I will say pre-acquisition relationship building for companies is absolutely essential. Okay. You want to not only build relationships with the government through going to these trade shows, through going to industry, but you want to do it in a way where you're genuinely not just looking for that next contract. You don't have dollar signs. Sometimes I would talk to people in trade shows. I could see the dollar signs in their eyes. Like they only cared about me and what I was trying to do because they knew the solicitation was coming up. That's fine. I mean, it's business.
Yeah.
And these you want to get in, you want to get that contract. So that's perfectly normal. But really effective relationship building for companies is one in which you show up at these shows because you want to be part of the conversation, the solution building conversation of a major government problem. And that may not be one contract or one RFP. That may be multiple RFPs across time, and the company just wants to be there. They want that's part of the public-private relationship. Yeah. And I'll call out Tim Cook, our president of ASI. The boss. There's no bone in his body where he's going to these trade shows where he's thinking about that next contract. He's part of the community to try to help build those relationships. So I would say to Rockcom, if you're asking what's the deal with personable, it can get hokey, but at the same time, if you are personable in a way, if you go to these trade shows in a way where you're trying to be a member of a community to meet the mission, your genuine authenticity will be very evident because contracting officers have one conversation after another with not so genuine companies. Yeah. They're like, hey, let's go to the side room and I'll show you some stuff. And but if there's ways that you can carry yourself and you can hand your card out, business card, that's fine. That's you can talk about what you offer. That's all business. Government people should not go to an industry day and not expect to get that kind of information. That's the whole point. Yeah. So it is business, but at the same time, you can present yourself in a way where you're really just at the very core, your presence at that industry day is to get to know the government better so that you can in the future contribute to the welfare and defense of our nation as a company. If you give that kind of perspective, have that kind of reputation, it's just going to create, and it won't be like, if you're that kind of person, it's not like when we submit a proposal like an ASI, it comes in and the contract officer's like, oh, ASI, I had that great conversation. It's not like it's going to get you, an edge in a source selection. But what it can do is when you build up those relationships with clients, you can start finding out, they'll open up about their problems. Mm-hmm. And what you'll be doing is you'll building up ways that you can submit way better proposals to meet their needs.
They'll actually read your RFIs?
They'll read your RFI. Exactly. They'll read your RFI responses, and your responses will be tailored to they'll read your response, whether it's an RFI response or an RFP proposal, and they'll say, these guys get it.
Yeah.
And the way you get to where these guys get it, because the government's so complicated, and the government's not transparent a lot, so you really got to dig under the shell sometimes, peel the onion layers to figure out what the real problem is. Once you get there, though, and you get to that point where they read your stuff and they say, these guys get it. That's how you start winning contracts, and the best way to do that is by getting to know people at those trade shows or calling them on the phone, and the balance, Rockcom, the trick is to not do it in a salesman-y, hokey kind of way.
I was told once, if you make your business all about helping people, then you never have to worry about money.
Yeah.
So the money that'll show up. Like, you just genuinely go with the idea to help people.
Yeah.
Like, the money will come.
Yeah. And that actually, if you're in the business of doing that, that does mean that you'll lose a lot of competitions too, because it's like what we talked about earlier. You're not gonna do low bids.
Yeah.
You're gonna submit an offer to the government. You're gonna say, in my belief, no lower than this price. If you go lower than the price I'm submitting to you, your requirement is in danger, and I'm not gonna go lower. This is what's best for you. And so you'll start giving honest proposals too in your prices. And hey, you win some, you lose some sometimes, but in the long game, you will end up more successcul.
Awesome.
I was gonna say something else.
Good, because this has only gone on for like 10 minutes, and these are usually an hour long.
Oh, really? I could tell you a story.
Yeah, stories are good. People love stories.
I don't know if this story. I'm talking about the German culture.
Okay.
I was. This is how direct Germans can be. The constructive criticism. I was when you move to Germany on base as an American, you have to get a user license. That's your driver's license, and it's not like a German driver's license. It's like government, but you have to take it. You can't just use your state of Texas driver's license or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to learn the German rules of the road, which are different.
I heard there aren't any rules.
So there aren't any. Yeah.
Just no speed limits.
No speed limits. Yeah, but definitely Germans like rules.
Yeah.
So I showed up at this user. So the training was me and a bunch of it was an army base, so a bunch of army active duty guys and their BDUs sitting and watching these two Germans. One was an older German, kind of a stout guy, sitting like this at attention in the back. He had this mustache, it was like this. But he was in the back, just super. The guy in the front was this young guy, and he was super nervous. And he was he had this cards. He was supposed to teach us signs. That was the first part.
Okay.
Lesson 1, road signs. And then he would drop a card and pick it up. It was and I would look around at these soldiers. All these soldiers were just going like this, watching him. And finally, about 10 minutes in of this, the older German guy stepped in, and he was like, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Hans. This is his first day, and he's doing a terrible job. And then Hans was like, mm-hmm. And Hans immediately stepped back, and the other guy stepped in and finished it like clockwork. Hans stepped back, this guy stepped in, finished the lesson, problem resolved. Can you imagine in America?
Yeah.
You're like, first of all, Hans, you're doing great. Just a couple of things we can work on, I think that was a really good start. No, Germans, they'll just take care of it.
It's not good. Oh, man.
I was going to mention something about industry days, though.
Who puts on industry days?
Yeah, so industry days covered in part. We talked about part 10 of the FAR.
We did?
Yeah, way back. I think we did.
That's something.
Yeah. So part 10.
What is part 10 of the FAR?
Market research.
Oh, okay.
That's the part I was talking to. Like, if you want to read a part of the FAR.
Oh yeah.
You feel good about
right.
yourself.
The shortest one.
I think it's the shortest part still.
Okay.
And it's it just talks about the different ways that you can conduct market research.
Okay.
So the government puts on industry days as a way to open up and conduct maybe market research that involves face-to-face conversations with companies, handshaking. Maybe a lot of times there's like booths where you walk around the booths and discover people's products. It is by far potentially one of the most valuable ways to do market research, and at the same time, potentially one of the biggest wastes of time. So
what would make it like? What's the key to going on one end of that versus the other?
Yeah, so I think we did a little chart on our cowboy video.
I remember that a long time ago. Yeah.
So a lot of government. I mean, a lot of times government offices. I'm not going to say this is just common, but the danger that government offices have is to just check that they did an industry day or check that they did an RFI, like a checklist. Say, look, we did an RFI, we did market research, and really not think about the value to yourself and industry that you're trying to get out of this. And it really can turn into a go through the motions exercise. Okay. It really can. I mean, I've been through so many, I hate to say I've probably been through more waste of time industry days than I have really meaningful industry days. Here's a meaningful industry day. A meaningful industry day is one in which the government very transparently communicates what their, this is not common, but they'll even say what they're planning on contracting for. There's nothing to prevent them from say the price range. This is how big this is kind of going to be, or give them an idea of how big the requirement is. Just go through the list. Third quarter, we're planning on sending this RFP out. Fourth quarter, we're planning on sending this RFP out, but here's the problem with this one that we still need to know. We're going to send a statement of objectives out because we're going to give you the objectives. We have major security issues we got to work on. So here's what we want in your proposal. If they're that detailed and that transparent, then nobody on the side of the companies would think that that's a waste of time, because those companies walk away with information that they otherwise wouldn't have if they didn't go. And sometimes that industry day is not recorded or anything. So you only know if you know, you know. If you know, you know. And you know if you go to that industry day. If you don't go to the industry day.
So the advantage for the companies that go to industry day is to just kind of get on the radar and to kind of understand
part of it, but
so they can have a better proposal when the time comes.
And what I just mentioned was you also can go to industry days, really value-added industry days, by knowing what's on the docket for the government. So, if it's a really bad industry day, then best case scenario for companies is what you said. They can walk around, kind of make themselves known, maybe shake hands, but those can even be bad, where you have the government people who don't go on the showroom floor, and they don't walk around and talk to any companies, or they get the card and they throw it. You should look at trash cans on industry days. Ooh. If you go around the hotels and look at the trash cans in the hotels, full of business cards. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's evident too. So you have this big, sometimes you have a keynote speaker that's like, someone high saying, we really want to reach out to industry. We really care about industry. But the entire tone of that day is not giving them any information that's going to help them. Okay. And then so plan B is, well, I'll just get to know them. Like that, we talked about that pre-acquisition relationship building. Maybe the government's not really doing much for that relationship building either. They're being arm's length.
Look them up on Facebook and see how old their kids are.
Yeah, right. But they're being like standoffish. They're not talking, or they're talking a lot of times, cliques hang out with cliques. So I've seen a lot of industry days where the companies talk amongst themselves, government talk amongst. You see a lot of BDUs standing together like a uniform.
Like a junior high dance.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's no mingling.
Yeah.
So the value-added ones are the ones where the government is completely transparent about what it wants to do. Sometimes they have something called a reverse industry day, where the government will seek more feedback from companies on how they should do things better.
Okay.
And then there's another effective method, and CDAO, actually, the Chief Digital AI Office just did this recently in one of their big AI symposiums called DoD Advantage. They did one-on-one conference, so that you can sign up for a one-on-one session where the company is talking directly to the government about you can sit down, and I used to love them. We called them like round tables. When I was working contracting in the Air Force, we did it. And it's super low key, or at least the good ones are. You're getting to know that company, you're doing relationship building. So there's a little bit of small talk going back and forth. You find out where they live and everything. But then you get to where, to make those one-on-ones really beneficial, is the government's giving just as much valuable information as the industry's giving information. If it's one-sided, it's not as beneficial. You want both. You want a really good exchange of information between the two.
Okay.
Tit for tat.
So I think I've noticed that there's some tension between industry and government. Like they need to stay separated.
Yeah.
In some sense, especially from the government side. Like they don't want to be too close to industry. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's so.
You're gonna say depends again, aren't you?
It depends. This has been historically, like the pendulum has swung one way or the other, and there are some very real dangers for inappropriate relationships with companies.
Okay.
And I'm not saying inappropriate like you're doing bad stuff with them and stuff, but you're talking to them, giving them information you shouldn't, and really what you're doing is you're creating, if not in reality, the appearance of impropriety. That's a term, the appearance of impropriety. That means that you're, like if I'm hanging out with Google at a conference the whole time, whenever I see Google, I'm like, hey, Google, come here.
Yeah.
And I talk to, and then, Amazon, NVIDIA, or whoever, just left in the dust. I never talk to them. Okay. That's an appearance of, that I'm only really reaching out to that company. And that can be a problem when you do have if you do have one-on-one engagements with companies outside an industry day, which I've done, which I endorse.
Yeah.
So coffee, even a lunch.
Yeah.
They can't pay for your meal. But if you do that, you just got to do it the right way. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But you have to do it in a way where you're not creating an appearance of impropriety. Defense Innovation Unit, I'm going to call them out because they do this very well. They're out in Mountain View, California.
All right.
They have trainings on this.
That's a government?
It's a DIU, Defense Innovation Unit. Their whole purpose in the DoD is to bring new commercial products into the government. Emphasis on the commercial, because we do a lot of like mil-spec stuff that wastes a lot of money. Now it's like we got so much commercial high tech.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, we don't need to reinvent anything. Let's just use this stuff.
Yeah.
It's cheaper. It's better. The government should be making anything. So DIU, their whole purpose is to bring that stuff into the folds of the DoD. And they're not going to be at the Pentagon. So they situate themselves right outside the Google headquarters. And they do a lot of one-on-one lunches with companies, but they do it, they have training on it, they make sure they do it the right way. But to them, it's incredibly important that they have an intimate relationship with the market. Not one company, not just a couple companies. They have an intimate relationship with the whole realm of the high-tech market out there.
So that makes sense. So it's not about, so the impropriety comes from like favoritism. But it is very good for the government to have close relationships with industry, just not with one part of the industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually what happens is the pendulum goes from talk to companies, one-on-one, wine and dine, whatever. And then something happens, like a bad news story happens, and then the pendulum jerks back to the other side. And then it's button down the hatch. Don't talk to companies, especially when a solicitation's out.
Belly button down the hatch?
Belly button down the hatch, yeah. It's like there's ways that we talk to companies. We can only talk to them through the RFI.
Okay.
Or we can only talk to them during an industry day. And so...
Where are we at right now on that pendulum, do you think?
We're more toward, unfortunately, the button down the hatch.
Okay.
The Office of Federal Procurement Policy has released a series of memos called Mythbusters.
Okay, yeah.
And that's... we made a video on that, but I don't think we ever released it. Maybe we will in the future.
We made one. We have another one coming.
Yeah, with the forbidden... You knew this was going to come up. I have to ask. You had dinner with a contractor. What were you thinking?
Well, actually, I was thinking I wanted to build better relationships with industry and know more about the market.
Thing.
Yeah, forbidden
I think there's a couple
practices.
Mythbusters in there.
I think so.
We did one all on the Mythbuster Memos. And really the purpose of those memos, which the first one came out 10 years ago, and we still haven't, as a culturally, gone around to being more open with companies. But the whole purpose of that is saying you can talk to companies. You should talk to companies. Talk to them. Engage with them.
Yeah.
There's two reasons why the government will be standoffish. One is more problematic than the other. So I'll mention the less problematic one. The less problematic one is that they feel like it's illegal or it's inappropriate.
Okay.
And the reason why that's less problematic is really that just means that we need to re-educate the workforce.
They're trying to do the right thing.
They're trying to do the right thing. It's good. A lot of contracting officers, rightfully, they'll look at themselves as kind of, sometimes in the acquisition team, they are the only, I hate to use the term watchdog. I don't think you should ever define yourself as the watchdog. It's call yourself the watchdog and see how many meetings you get invited to. But they feel like maybe they're the only ones in the room that are saying, guys, we need to be careful here.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the role of the CEO to do that. But so they get really worried about inappropriate relationships because there's so many more protests out there now. The protests have gone up. Look at this third one here. Looks like it's a chart depicting all the protests from FY 2018 to FY 2022 and which ones were sustained and which ones were dismissed. Wow. That is pretty. I like the squares. So that's why, but you can be re-educated, and I think that the more problematic reason why the government will not engage in relationships with industry, like just talking to them, it's because they don't have the time to do it, and that's the bigger problem. So they're busy doing all that paperwork or doing taskers for their boss. They're doing everything that requires them 9 to 5 to sit in their cubicle or their office. And if there was even a question about whether they should have coffee with this company or pick up the phone and talk to this company and have a really good market research, the first thought, and I think a lot of contracting officers' mind is, I do not have time for that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Is there a solution
That's a problem.
to that?
The solution is artificial intelligence. I think so. I
have the robots call the industry?
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get C-3PO to pick up the phone. So the more I say that half joking. I think we are so worried about artificial intelligence replacing the contracting workforce.
Okay.
I would say this, because I've answered this on LinkedIn before, and I've talked about this in conferences and stuff. If you're the kind of contracting professional that defines yourself by the paperwork that you do and you submit, even the contract that you sign, if that is the whole value and purpose of your job, is pushing that paper, then you're in trouble, and technology will replace you. If you're the kind of contracting officer that is a critical thinker, that is engaged in business, you're a business advisor to the team, you're trying to figure out the best way to engage in a best value to industry and the company relationship as you tackle really hard intellectual property issues, really hard issues of like responsible use of AI for one example, but just figuring out how to get somewhere to the deadline of when this needs to be delivered, when you're already 2 months late, trying to strategize. If you're that kind of contracting officer, then AI will be your beast of burden. Like you will be able to unload all of these menial tasks on these machines and say, I'm going to go grab a chat with this company. Like you do these purchase orders or whatever. Yeah. And the problem with AI, I'm doing the Bach thing where I'm straying from the final note here. So I'll circle back.
Are you bringing it back?
I hope to. Right. Yeah, I'll be like Bach.
Okay.
The problem with AI though is that they engage. Contractors cannot engage in something called inherently governmental functions, IGF.
Okay.
That's FAR subpart 7.5, I think.
Okay.
So there are certain functions that you can only do if you take the oath of office every time you get hired in the government. You're like, I Scott, will not, betray my country. Waste taxpayer dollars or whatever. So contractors can't do inherently governmental functions. Law enforcement, contractors can't fight wars, even though recently in some of these recent wars, contractors have been in the combat zone with the soldiers, but they can't, to actually engage in more intense combat is inherently governmental function. That needs to be a soldier. But less drastic, signing contracts, making any sort of decision, a government, like on who gets benefits or housing.
Okay.
That's all a government employee needs to do that. So, in order to be really good at that inherently governmental function, you can leverage technology and contractors to set you up for that really good decision. And that's where AI needs to rest. AI will never, at least in my estimation, AI should never sign contracts. That is a decision. Like, people's lives are at stake. Financial lives are at stake when you choose one contractor over another. That should always be done by a human being. But the technology can set you up to do that. And one of the things that when you are able to make those kind of decisions faster, that you'll be able to engage in, maybe for the first time for many contracting professionals, if they use technology, they will be able to study and read the clauses they put in their contracts that they've never had because they've been doing a matrix, and the AI can do that, and then they can spend their time reading the clauses and double checking that AI to make sure it's not hallucinating. Yeah. The other thing, though, is engaging in more meaningful industry relationships. And that is really something that can be done more and more as technology it advances. And so we've got workforce shortages all over the government with contracting. I would say the best way to work lean and to handle the workforce shortages is to leverage technology, and that'll let you go out and engage in these, here's coming back to the note, engage in these conversations with companies.
All right. Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
I hope we answered your question.
Yeah. Thanks, Rockcom.
Yeah, thanks, Rockcom.
7.
Rockcom 7.
Yeah. And anybody else who has questions, man, I mean, we would love...
We'll answer anyone who asks the question.
Anyone, yeah.
All right, close this out? Yeah. We're done.
We'll fade it down and say thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. See you later.
No talk of music on this one? I feel like we've ended every other one with music talk.
We should do Bach.
You just did Bach.
Oh, we did Bach in the last one?
Yeah.
Oh, should we do a music analogy?
Yeah. Somehow music analogy always seems to end us up.
Oh, yeah.
We just did Bach. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we just did Bach. I don't know. Do you have one?
No. Maybe next time.
This will be silent. Just put circus music in there.
No resolution.